Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Halloween edition of Visual Storytelling with Olschi. I wanted to use the spooky season to talk about Shoujo Horror Manga. Shoujo Horror Manga? Is that even a thing? Yes, it kinda is. On the first glance, shoujo and horror should not go together. Shoujo manga is usually drawn in a very cute style, with big eyes and flowy hair, while horror is grotesque, disturbing, and sometimes simply disgusting. So when I found out that shoujo horror is an actual genre, and there have been whole monthly magazines dedicated to this genre from the 60s to the 80s in Japan, I was kinda surprised. But also I kinda wasn't. Women and girls have always been drawn to the supernatural. Raise your arm if you have been calling upon ghosts when you were a kid or a teenager. Even reading horoscope is kind of like dipping your toes into the realm of higher powers in a way. So let's dive into the dark world of shoujo horror manga. Just as regular shoujo manga, shoujo horror has some of its influences in the Western media. The movie Bad Seed from 1956 created the trope of the creepy young girl, which gave birth to many more similar characters in movies like The Exorcist or The Shining. These movies had, well, creepy young girls in them, which are not to be trusted or they will bloody murder you. The Japanese market took this trope and adjusted it for its own audiences. Some anthologies have been created by this trope. And one of those anthologies is the monthly Halloween, which ran from 1986 to 1995. We will be talking about it later. But claiming that shoujo horror was only influenced by Western media would be a lie, obviously. Japan has its own history of myths, urban legends, and ghost stories. Quite often those stories do include female ghosts. For example, the Ghost of Oyuki. The painter Maruyama Okyo woke up one night and saw a ghostly female figure hovering next to his bed. She had pale skin, dark long hair, and wore a wild burial kimono. Once she was gone, the painter rose from his bed and painted what he saw. This painting established how ghosts were portrayed from then on in Japan. At least the no-feet part. The black hair and pale skin do have their roots in Japanese tradition and go much further back in history than that. Japanese folklore partly has its roots in Shinto, a religion which attributes spirits to objects and spaces. Those spirits are not always good and can take the shape of vengeful ghosts and demons, called yokai. While the Ghost of Oyuki was just kind of hanging out, more often than not, female ghosts in Japanese folklore are taking revenge. Traditionally, in Japanese culture, women who are wronged by men go through a symbolic transformation, beauty into ugliness, and culture into vile. They take revenge upon men and give a warning to the male-centered culture. Women's unpredictability and subsuming power have been viewed with mixed feelings of awe and respect. Thus, enter Tomie. Tomie is the first published work of Junji, the most famous horror manga author, for a good reason. His stories dive deep into the realities of human nature and are chilling to the bone. Tomie was first published in 1987 in the aforementioned monthly Halloween, thus making it a shoujo horror manga. The story centers around Tomie, a beautiful girl who is not very liked by the girls in her class. She has only one female friend, but is quite popular by the male classmates. She has an affair with her teacher, and at a school trip she tells him about being pregnant with his child and pressures him to divorce his wife or she will tell everyone about their affair. After a couple of male students overhear the conversation and confront the two, Tomie accidentally gets pushed off a cliff. The class sees the accident, but to cover up for the male students, they collectively decide to get rid of the body by chopping it up. Team effort. All the students then attend the funeral, pretending not knowing who the killer was. But the next day, Tomie comes back, unharmed, like nothing happened. This is where the madness starts. All the students involved turn mad, bit by bit. And those are just the first few chapters. No matter where Tomie goes afterwards, whoever has the misfortune of meeting her becomes obsessed with her, especially men. She never really kills anyone herself, but she tells people infatuated with her to do the killing for her. And while she is beautiful, her personality is shallow and spoiled, which doesn't stop the man she encounters to fall in love with her at first sight. There's just this weird pull she has towards everybody. She just possesses something that makes people go crazy over her. So crazy that they end up eventually killing her, either out of jealousy or because she was, well, mean. She can be so mean. There is this urge in them to possess her and to cut her into pieces. Not just kill her, but to cut her into pieces. But each time Tomie comes back, actually multiplying as each body part will grow into another fully grown Tomie. Each time she comes back, she seems to lose more and more of her humanity. In the beginning, she was horrified when she found out that pictures of her show a kind of monster living within her. She was still trying to find a solution in a way, but by the end of the story, she's just monstrous, bringing demise to pretty much everyone who meets her. There are so many ways to analyze Tomie. Even though each chapter ends pretty badly, they can all still be dissected in their own themes. One theme constant throughout all of them is beauty, and its flip side, hideousness. The contrast of horror and beauty was a core aesthetic in the 60s to 70s shoujo horror. We are still in the realms of shoujo after all, so big eyes and wavy hair are a must. That's why on the covers the main character are still drawn very beautifully, while in the background you see the horror that they're experiencing, like ghosts, demons, bats, and so on. Sometimes beauty in this work is there simply as a contrast, to show who is evil and who is not. We like to see ourselves in the beautiful protagonist, while the evil witch's nature is shown through her ugliness. But beauty can also be used to explore other themes, like our obsession with it. In Tomie, the men who get obsessed with her do so because of her beauty. They often don't care about looking past it to see who's underneath it. They want to own her beauty, and when they can't, they lash out. Meanwhile, the women around Tomie get jealous and distrustful of her. They want to be just as beautiful as her, and some of them even do get the chance to. But that usually has tragic consequences for them, just as it does for Tomie. I have been wondering why so many women like horror. Not all of them, of course. I have plenty of female friends who just don't even want to look at it, which is fair enough. But I also have some friends who are really into horror. I guess I'm somewhere in between. I like it, but I don't often seek it out. I don't watch horror movies or read horror manga to wind down or relax. I don't even think I particularly enjoy it, but I'm fascinated by it. Like, I don't watch horror to have fun and to be in a good mood. I watch horror to experience different kind of emotions. But why am I so fascinated with it? Kevin McNeely writes in Women in Horror Month, why do we love horror? So why do women love horror so much? How did the genre that is traditionally targeted towards a male audience find such a strong female following? It's pretty simple actually, we just get it. Horror explores the worst case scenario, the broken down car in the middle of nowhere, the strange phone call when you're alone in the house, that guy you're pretty sure is following you home, the sudden realization that you shouldn't have put your trust in those strangers. It's a cathartic release that allows us to really identify with the heroes of the story. In horror, women can be made victims, but more often than not, they're survivors too. Women in horror are badass. They crush, kill, and destroy the villains in every turn. And in some cases, they're extraordinarily competent villains themselves. They show strength and power in a time when we, as women, don't often feel strong or powerful. Horror can be empowering for us. Seeing the heroine taking the matters into her own hands and escaping a horrible situation feels cathartic. Cathartic. But there is probably even more to that. While Western horror media is often about horrible circumstances given to us from the outside, according to Hiromi Dollase, Shoujo Horror Manga offers an inward perspective, to face not just the monster outside, but the monster within. The genre of Shoujo Horror Manga, despite its popularity, has not been carefully examined because it has always been regarded as a vulgar subgenre of shoujo manga. However, symbolically speaking, Shoujo Horror Manga hold a significant position. Shoujo Horror Manga explore words and images that go against the norm of shoujo manga. Whereas mainstream shoujo manga are filled with flowers, ribbons, and cute imagery, shoujo horror manga are permeated with blood, death, and ghosts. While shoujo manga's main focus is their characters' sensitive inner feelings of melancholy, love, solitude, and joy, horror manga explore the characters' dark feelings of jealousy, anger, fear, and frustration. In her article Shoujo Spirits in Horror Manga, Dollase talks about the different kind of fears female readers might identify in the shoujo horror manga of the past decades. Mama ga Kawaii, or I'm Scared of Mother, by Kazuo Umezu, is about a girl who visits her sick mother in the hospital who reveals to be a snake woman and starts chasing her. The thought of a mother who is supposed to be a nurturing figure was especially frightening to the readers. Umezu explained the idea behind the story. At that time, shoujo manga always depicted the attachment of mothers and children, of which I harbored suspicion. Daughters are grateful for their mothers, but also sometimes bothered by them. Mothers often think of their daughters as their own possessions, which is a scary thought. We as readers, when we read or see some thoughts that we might have had put down on paper, have the opportunity to confront and analyze those feelings. And in horror, this process might often take place subconsciously. For a girl, the mother-daughter relationship might not just be about whether the mother is smothering them and is having high expectations of them, but it can also be a reminder of their own future role as the mother, especially back in the day. Women are more free to choose their own path nowadays, but certain social expectations are still there. Girls get plastic dolls when they can barely walk. Here, practice how to be a mother. So having stories that help us dealing with those truly scary thoughts and expectations can be cathartic. Some other themes Dollase talks about in her article, things like being bullied by other female students, and then coming back as a vengeful ghost. As a reader, you see these characters experience a worst-case scenario, and while dealing with our own fear of experiencing them. And just like in the mainstream shoujo, gender and sexuality are also often part of the story in shoujo horror. For example, in Hyaki Yakusho, the gender roles of the protagonist's family are erased. There are no hierarchies, and also the male protagonist has a gender-neutral name. And of course, one theme you often find within a shoujo horror manga is love, whether with supernatural beings or with humans. So shoujo horror manga does not only give us the chills that we so love around the spooky season and outside of it, but it also reaches us on an emotional level. The format of manga does give us a different kind of experience that a movie or a book would. As a reader, you decide at what pace you read, and there is just no way of building in cheap jump scares. Instead, the artist has to rely on their art style and their storytelling skills in order to scare the reader. They usually do this by using tools like the uncanny valley, body horror, and just general scary stuff. As a genre have been becoming more split and distinct, the peak of shoujo horror was probably over after the 80s. But there are still horror manga aimed at a female audience. But those usually tend to be josei. The line back then just was not as clearly drawn as it is now. Tomie isn't exactly the kind of manga I would recommend to anyone younger than 16. Then again, the reading age is supposed to be 13 to 16 years old. So maybe I'm patronizing the youth and they actually can handle much more complicated topics than I expect them to. Anyways, here are some of the more recent works that could be considered shoujo or josei horror. Mermaid Saga by Rumiko Takahashi. Okay, this one is not recent. Pet Shop of Horrors. Various short stories by Junji Ito. Ghost Hunt. Helter Skelter. Okay, I made this list when I was doing my research, and only now when I'm editing the video have I looked up the years of publication, and most of this manga were published in the last century, so that's not exactly what you would call recent. But oh well, it's fine. Jigoku Shoujo, Vampire Princess Miyu, Zekyo Gakyu, All, After School Nightmare, XXX Holic, I guess, and Vampire Night, maybe? Vampire Night isn't really scary, is it? And many more. I haven't read all of them. Ghost Hunt, Vampire Night, and XXX Holic, to be honest, that's it. But they popped up while I was doing my research, and I want to read pretty much all of them. Horror and science fiction are two genres that have a special place in my heart. They can explore the truths of the human condition like no other genre can. And in shoujo horror you have a beautiful art style to go along with it. Hope this video was able to maybe awaken your interest in the genre, or at least give you some reading suggestion for this spooky season. I will spend my evening reading Mary Shelley, the biography of the author of Frankenstein. It's not a manga, but it's a comic and it does have some beautiful imagery in it. And after that I'll see what shoujo horror manga I can get my hands on. I really hope that the genre will continue existing, as we really need it. If you have any of your own suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. Otherwise, like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on my other social media, or I will haunt you. Yeah, no, haunting people is too much work. I don't know how Tomie does it. I will mention all my resources in the description box, so you can check those out if you like. I'm not a scholar, so sometimes my work is somewhat sloppy. So if you notice any kind of mistakes I did, feel free to mention them. Until then, thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful Halloween, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.